Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Chief Delegate meeting. This is meeting number 20. Today is Thursday, March 3rd, and all six of us are here. Randall may need to dip out after a little bit, and we're going to just kick things off with some individual updates. So we'll start with you, Randall. Take it away.
So for this week, I was able to finish some work with polling system. We added polling system to our platform, so in the future we can do some polls and have real users that are either agent members or users that we've been able to verify using port. So that's something that we finished. And I think I talked about how we finished the voting system. So now we are working on integration. Yeah, with the dApps and all that stuff. So we are doing some good work there. In terms of exchanges, we have like over, I think over 900 and change exchanges that we've been able to collect some information about them, contacts, and we are working on dApps as well. These are things that we are doing so that we can help with the communication strategy when it's time for upgrades. And we are still helping out with tickets as well. There's something that came up, but I think Aaron already told us that he was investigating on that. And John also had a problem with Power Up. We reached out to him and he told us what was going on. So far, so good. We don't have any other issues from that end. Everything seems to be going well. We are helping people on a daily. And we are trying to also help Fractally so that we can, get the consensus of the people and build Fractally on EOS. So that's about it.
Speaking of Fractally, John, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, well, other than working on Fractally, been just in the chats, helping people understand more, and yeah, also our fireside chat, get a bit more information out there, and yeah, answer any questions that the community has on Fractally, and get the ideas pumping on what we can do with it.
All right, cool. Jesse, take it away.
Hey guys, hope everyone had a good week. It was a tough week for us. I'll go through some of the points. We started dipping our toes in the crypto influencer pool, and we did a video with a Spanish influencer called BTC Monitor, about 75,000 subs, and many things went wrong in that. We looked at 7, so we have a document, 7 things went wrong. Pretty disappointing. And then the next day we had a Turkish like a tweet. It's like, all right, we figured out some of the problems, we'll do this, check all 7 boxes, and then an 8th thing went wrong. And so we're just we're learning how to best navigate these influencers, and actually have a meeting with Waxa, with Helios and EOS marketing. We're going to brainstorm a little bit, like the best way to deal with these influencers. Also, our French Hive, we're doing like an EOS news type thing with an influencer on Facebook. So that's kind of like our 2 strategies right now. We want to do interviews, and we want to share news, like just share EOS stuff like once a week. Still working with the Luganda, or the in Uganda influencer. We're going to be doing something with him next week. So yeah, that's that. Our swarms have been difficult. This bot on Discord is just really not working so well for us. That's why we're working with Tippet, and that's coming along nicely, and hopefully they'll be done soon. So we're just really going to save our swarms for like the really negative stuff out there. And so we did one the other day, this influencer called Crypto Wizard. 300,000 followers. He said EOS is dying, had a EOS BTC chart. And actually, that just reminds me about that chart. So like I said, we spoke to a Turkish influencer. We did a deal with them, and they spoke to their influencer friends like about EOS, because like they haven't heard about EOS in a while, and now we're paying them like in EOS. And apparently what they came back with was like the EOS BTC chart is looking so bad that they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And you know, it's like these technical analysis, it's like might as well be like voodoo. I mean, I don't believe in that stuff at all, but people care about it. And so it's been tough. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty in the community, like we all know. Anyone watching these CDA calls knows what I'm talking about. And when you have uncertainty, it's just a suppression for the price. So that's been really tough. Trying to work through things. I understand that, you know, sometimes it gets really messy before we come to a good solution with more certainty. So hopefully we'll get there eventually. We are working on the Fractally white paper translation. We're almost done. Recording this on a Thursday. Hopefully the Spanish, Korean, and Chinese translations will be out and formatted tomorrow. And the conflict in Russia is really causing us difficulties in the Russian and Chinese hive. Our Chinese Princess B, he is really being a champion with this translation. He's moving cities, he's going in bunkers and working on this translation, like really commendable effort from our Princess B in the Chinese hive. We are working on our report, our February report. We're gathering all the data, but it's really coming along when we started EOS Beast 2.0. And all the hives are really kind of getting like a really solid footing, it feels now, with the system. And so we have like 11 solid hives. We also had some not resignation, but we have some new Princess Bees in the English hive. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank Dario with the bottom of my heart. The English hive, it's been the incentives for most people who speak English, they're in the United States or Canada or Australia. It's just not great incentive. So it's been really hard for us finding a leader in English hive. And Daryl's been with us since the beginning, and he kind of saw like his skill set. I mean, he's support. I mean, that's his skill set. But he knew we were just so kind of. I was even going to be the Princess Bee of the English hive because that's how kind of low we are. But we finally found Danish crypto. He's stepping in. He's learning. We also have a new Princess Bee in the French hive. So I just want to thank Bishop for his work. And so we're on our third Princess Bee for the French hive. So it's difficult kind of just getting these new Princess Bees kind of up to speed with everything that we're doing. And yeah, and so like I said, 11 solid hives and then we have like 3 other hives that are under construction. That's a Portuguese hive, an Israeli hive, and Swahili. So Swahili is like our last kind of major language that we don't have yet. And that's it's been, I've interviewed 3 people for the Swahili hive, and it just hasn't worked out yet. But that's like the kind of the last major one that I want. And then there's going to be no more hives like this. We have plenty. And so, and I know it's kind of long winded, but we're coming out with other stuff too. And we're chugging along, and it's still great waking up every day and running EOS Bees, and hopefully we'll make it to the promised land eventually.
So with the Swahili hive, how many will that be?
Well, Swahili is a major language in the world, and I think it could be one of our top like hives in terms of quantity, like of our scout bees. Yeah, it could be big, but we just don't have a leader yet.
But how many languages will that make it if you say that's the final one you're trying to get? Well, it'll bring the
that's so
total
14.
number.
14.
14. Cool. Epic. All right, cool. Chris Barnes.
Yo, let's see. Update. The biggest relatable thing, the My Vote EOS campaign, soft launch, still soft, and we're ramping it up next week with really rolling out the website, which you can go to now, but it was just being tweaked, myvoteos.com. And yeah, we've got some BPs. We've got 8 or 9 BPs signed up to the pledge already, and some different EOS groups that are supportive of the initiative and sort of what it stands for. And yeah, the website has this option where you can, if you want to tweet to your exchange of choice, you can tweet to them. You can kind of hit a button, it'll automatically set up the tweet. You can just send it, and it's basically, hey, exchange, we would like you to allow your token holders to vote. You shouldn't be voting on their behalf. You should be custodying tokens, sure, but you shouldn't be making political decisions or governance decisions on a site, on a chain, to pick the other block producers. It's obviously way more truncated because it's Twitter, but that's sort of the message that can be there. So hopefully that comes out more prominently next week, and it'll be another sort of initiative and for those who care, it's a sentiment thing. Not everyone cares. And I understand. I missed part of the fireside chat yesterday, but I heard that there was a comment repeated a few times that EOS doesn't have a block producer problem. And I think that, definitions of problems there's a lot of nuance that can go into that word. So, I mean, maybe it's not a problem, but it certainly, there might be a sentiment problem that's related to block producers. So I guess it depends on the definition of what a problem is. And how you'd apply that. But yeah, that's basically the update. So hopefully there's more I'll be able to talk about next week with that campaign.
Very cool. Thanks for the update. Aaron.
Hello. I guess a quick comment on that. I tried to say something yesterday about that problem, quote unquote. And I the more I just keep thinking about it, I know we're getting out of updates, but it's like, I really think we need to separate governance and block production like that, because yeah, I won't get into it, but something that I think many of us are passionate about, and there is something there that needs to change. Anyways, without rambling way off topic and jumping into that, on our side, we started code reviews of the protocol upgrades that are needed for the account creation protocol to make this onboarding tool really a reality. We, in one of our calls, I think on Monday, did a kind of deep dive into it and started reviewing how the data is organized, what the data is for, how we document it. And we found some changes that we need to make, and maybe ways that we need to reorganize how the code works. So Daniel on my team is doing some of that this week, and we're going to touch base again next Monday to see where that's at. And those are going to result in the libraries that applications are going to be able to use to integrate account creation through our side, and hopefully other wallets will adopt the protocols. So that way it's not just Anchor, and hopefully other account creation providers, I guess. There's probably some name for this new thing. Like, hopefully other account creating services will also adopt the protocol. So that way it's not gray mass creating the accounts for other wallets as well. Like, we want this to be accessible to anybody to use through like any wallet and any account creation provider, because some people can't use some wallets and some people may not be able to use some account creation services. So being able to provide variety in both of those is going to be hugely important, and it shouldn't just all depend upon us. So we're looking to be able to at least offer the initial service for those that are compatible with both our wallet and our purchase flow. but others should be able to adopt this standard and run with it. So that way it is kind of this unified thing that we can use for any application to be able to onboard users. So it doesn't get rid of the hurdle of cost, obviously. Cost is the best abuse mechanism we could ask for. Just because anytime you try to make it free, then you've got to police the whole thing. But it should also be compatible with free mechanisms should somebody solve the abuse problem as well. So we're looking forward to being able to release that. And we should also have an integration directly into Unicove alongside this. That's our test bed. So looking forward to that.
Quick comment on that. The abuse and like the cost. Randall and I have been working on a referral system where the support agents qualify leads coming in. And if they're qualified, then the community can fund a rewards pool to cover the cost of account creation. So I'm excited. Almost next week, we'll share some more details. I've been writing, been taking advantage of the ENF feedback. And so I've been writing up like an article and yeah, we'll share that soon.
Awesome. And I know I've given you guys both batches of codes,
Yep.
and we're starting to do that with some other applications now. I don't know if I should talk about any of them or not, but we're also looking for systems to make that so that I don't have to give you something, that you can go get something. And then these systems can be integrated in new ways that we haven't seen before, and you can either get a huge batch for free or buy a batch that's closer to at cost. We really just need to make this whole system easier. And like, if there is going to be a cost always, because there's a cost on the blockchain and somebody has to subsidize that. But if we can make it so that the end user doesn't get hit with that cost and some intermediary in between gets hit with it, even if it's gray mass, like that's cool. We just, like on our end, we just don't want to be the police in the system that it has to watch for abuse. We don't have the staff for that right now.
You really seem
Maybe
like
someday.
the police kind of crew anyway, so.
No, it's not fun.
All right, that leaves me, and lately I've just been being the person trying to make peace with everybody behind the scenes. I feel like just trying to create lines of communication where there seems to be difficulty with communication, and just, you know, help people see the value in communication. And other than that, doing some video stuff. And yeah, just really happy Chuck has been on these videos. And Chuck, you can just go ahead and edit all that part about me being confused of what's going on. Yeah, ENF stuff, we're just clipping along. That's the other thing that just completely is occupying me right now, writing a lot, and there's a lot of information to process. So I have thoughts that I want to share, but they're going to spill over into non-specific updatey personal stuff, even though it's stuff that's personal. So I think the first thing that was suggested that we talk about is API Plus. Jesse, you said maybe we should try to break that down a little bit for the layperson, or more
Yeah.
so, a little less technical.
Yeah, if I can lead this section, I just have a couple, two questions I have for Aaron and maybe John, for Aaron. I think it'd be cool to give your 30-second elevator pitch of what an API is.
Well, it stands for Application Programming Interface, and I'll let Aaron do the rest.
It's funny because the blue paper actually has a section about that it's like 2 paragraphs where it actually like defines what they are. But I think that the 30-second pitch is that when your computer needs to talk to another computer, it does so through what's called an API. It's a way for your computer to both send and receive information from a server somewhere, most likely on the internet. And it's how we both read and write to the blockchain in the EOS.io space. So there are some trust issues on some of those sides, and there's still some unresolvable problems, but in general, that's what they're used for.
Like we talk to computers by typing into keyboards and pressing buttons, and then that's how our input. But how does my server talk to Aaron's server? What's the kind of language or that they use together? And so essentially, Aaron's server will have an application programming interface, and he basically says, "Hey, this is how you can talk to my server," and then from that I can then design my requests or how I talk to it accordingly. So Violet Garden has a API, and behind the API is a database of everyone's posts. And so when you load up Violet Garden, the web page, your browser will then do what's called a post request, and that goes to my API. And then from my API, it will send back the data back down to the web browser. But yeah, there's plenty of different APIs and methods of doing it. Again, there's fetching data, doing transactions on things, and even APIs and stuff for the iPhone. Like if you're an iOS developer, you would use the Apple iOS camera API. And so, if you want to take a photo, if you're writing an app that needs to take a photo, they would say, this is the API, this is how you're meant to, use that camera or, use whatever service that they're providing.
So is it accurate analogy to say that it's a keyboard between computers?
Kind of.
Yeah.
And a screen too. If we're using the keyboard as the input analogy, the computer's also got to have a screen so it can read the information coming back. So in a very roundabout way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a series of buttons that another computer can press. So if you want to create a post on Violet Garden, press this button. If you want to do take a photo, press that button, kind of thing. And then here's any additional information that the button requires to happen. Yeah.
So the DApp or the app has a computer, and then the blockchain is a computer. So those are the two computers that are interacting through this API. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing, I just wanted to share the thing that I think I'm most excited about from the API Plus paper. So for me, using the EOS blockchain is great, except for this one thing, which is these when I do, and I think this has to do with this. So I'm going to be asking about this transaction lifestyle thing that
life cycle.
Yeah, life cycle. Yeah.
I like lifestyle though.
Yeah, lifestyle.
That's awesome.
So when I do a transaction and it says success, and I click that link, it says like deferred transaction. And sometimes I have to wait like 30 seconds and then it comes up. And when I was reading like the transaction lifecycle, like problem and solution, I was thinking, oh, is that going to solve this? And so that's my question.
In some circumstances, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is ways to both on the front end and the back end make sure that what you're trying to do is successful. It is kind of it's a safeguard, because realistically, like it should just work. Like we shouldn't need this kind of extra stuff. But being in this cutting edge technology, like things do go wrong. Like nobody's ever done the things we're doing before. So there are going to be like, you did something some very specific way and then bug, like something blocked you. So what this proposal offers is a way for the APIs to kind of intelligently retry. It offers a way for the application that you're using to actually wait to confirm that the transaction was successful rather than just telling you it was, when it really in reality isn't. And it gives you ways that before you actually submit that transaction, it can detect if there's going to be a problem with it. So when we say transaction lifecycle, it is it is from the moment that you decide you want to do something to the moment that it is complete. There's a bunch of steps in the middle, and this proposal has 4 different things that in theory should really help from point A to point D or whatever is going on. So until we have like a perfect system, we kind of need these rails to make sure that things are going to be successful. And that's what this proposal is.
Yeah, and just for me, it almost always eventually goes through without me having to do the transaction again. Very rarely does it missed completely, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
it does. It
I
does
think of
miss
that
completely
request.
sometimes.
what?
Yeah. From my understanding, it basically when the node accepts it, it doesn't, it basically looks at it and says, yeah, this should be good. And then it will send you back the, transaction, hash as if it will be. It doesn't actually wait around, first put it onto blockchain, make sure that it's all, accepted by the rest of the nodes, and then say, it's good. So it's a little bit optimistic, I think, when it happens. And in most cases it works. So, it's fine. But there are cases where, it goes to shit. Or again, you want to wait for a confirmation as well, or irreversibility too, which is irreversibility is something that you're going to wait for things external from the chain. So stuff like if you sell your house, kind of thing, like don't hand over the keys to the house until you get irreversibility on the block that the transaction was done, kind of thing.
Cool. And then my last question, if I could ask specifically about Anchor, I think this probably has to do with something in the API plus blue paper. But when I know that I don't have CPU or net and I post a transaction, I'm expecting Anchor to prompt me to pay a transaction fee. And when it does it, it's great. And I'm okay with paying 0.001 EOS for a lot of stuff. And I assume like that's kind of the business model, or one of the business models of Anchor, that you're charging a fee. Maybe there's a little arbitrage of what you're actually paying for that transaction on the back end. But I assume that something in this API plus blue paper will make it so it's just more accurate. Like every time that I don't have it, that I'll get prompted for that fee.
It'll help. I think some of the stuff coming out in the Wallet Plus paper will potentially be more impactful to helping that. The issues over the last couple of days have been kind of a weird alignment of stars that has happened in the past, but it's been a couple months since it's happened, where there have been hiccups, almost 24 hours immediately, like after each other, where our rental system ran out of resources and couldn't recover. So fuel in the past like 24 to 48 hours, the instances where it hasn't done it is because it knew it couldn't, because the account itself didn't have the resources to do those things. So we're working on resolving that. But one of the things, like the transaction lifecycle that we were just talking about, those improvements will help the accuracy of these systems and the reliability of these systems. And the Wallet Plus, the SDKs we're going to be proposing in there are essentially the version 2 of the tools we're using to make that possible. And these tools will be available for more than just Anchor. So if you're using a ledger directly, if you're using Scatter or Token Pocket or MyKey or any of these other EOS wallets, you will still be able to use that same like fee model alongside of it, because it'll be a part of these SDKs now instead of a part of Anchor's SDKs. The only reason they're a part of Anchor's SDKs right now is because the SDKs everybody uses can't support this type of logic. So we're proposing kind of a shift in SDKs, and the justification in that proposal in the paper uses what you're describing as the actual, like, here's the problem we want to solve. We want to make sure everybody can get resources in an easy way and reduce the complexity of using these chains. So I'm I'm really happy that that transaction lifecycle proposal is kind of getting legs, and a lot of people are excited about that. And I really hope that just as many people, when the wallet paper comes out in whenever it is, like the next week or two, will be just as excited about the new SDKs because it solves some of the same problems.
Cool. Yeah, I'm done with my questions. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Any other questions?
Oh,
I'm
I had an
fishing
API
for 'em.
question. I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Cool. It is a dense and boring topic. So, I mean, it's important. I mean, that was part of the fireside yesterday. It's like, how do we make this exciting?
Okay, well, here's a segue. I'll
Do
let
it.
you decide where it segues to. Maybe this is something you were talking about earlier, but in this network, in the EOS network, whose responsibility is it to provide API services, and what have you proposed in the blue paper to accomplish that? I've read it, so I know, but
Yeah.
I want to hear in your words.
All right. Traditionally, it's been the block producers, which kind of goes back to the, I guess you could call that one of the problems with block production right now is that it is not all block producers offer really robust APIs. A lot of them offer APIs, but they're not to the same scale as some of the others. But there's really no incentive to do that. Like the amount of effort it takes to actually run a sufficient API, and when you weigh that against like what a block producer earns, like the incentives are just really misaligned right now. There's a few proposals in the API Plus paper, one of them being the central API, which would be, hey, let's have the network start an organization of some kind, or like a conglomeration of people in the community to run like a really professional API that is publicly available, that reduces the need for block producers to run it. Obviously, we'd still want block producers to run their own because the more the better. But if this would be a way for all of the block producers and the network to come together and mutually fund one really strong offering for the network. In the research we were looking at, there's a lot of chains that do this. The most notable being like Ethereum and Infura. Infura is like what all Ethereum developers use. There's a few others as well that I think have gained traction, but it is a turnkey solution that a developer can just be like, bam, I have an API I can use and I can actually start working on my application. And it's going to be up.
Quick sidebar, it was, I think, revealed today that JP Morgan is actually one of the huge investors in Infura.
Oh, damn.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah. A financial
is there a centralization risk? Like how does Infura address, or is it just that's not concerned in that?
There is a concern about centralization. I mean, you saw that with OpenSea, and the whole like my NFT got censored sort of thing. There are risks associated to that, and it's still an option to go run your own, obviously. And there are other companies that don't block it, but it's really the use case and like the dependency, like what your tolerance for that risk is.
So yeah, I mean, having Infura doesn't mean there's no value in having other APIs. It's just
Right.
The incentives aren't quite aligned in such a way to structure it to promote more APIs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe the solution is that instead of just the network funding one, like maybe they fund 5. And then that kind of mitigates the risk of centralization.
The one thing that stood out to me, you mentioned, you said BPs don't earn enough to do their own APIs.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's an opportunity to improve that. That would be one of the outcomes of the My Vote By campaign is if there's enough votes that are available for free, then that makes it potentially more economical for BPs to have more revenue a bottom line that they could direct towards API.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like it's not an either or. It's like, yeah, ENF should absolutely support an alternative to Infura, but we should also be willing to consider that if there's a way to structure BP pay to also encourage them to as well and demand it. It should be demanded of the top 21 that they have a functional, proper, at least a Hyperion node, like a full history node. It's not that much to run that. It's expensive because of the size. It's apparently like 15 terabytes. So I've found out. But that should be encouraged, even though it may not be like, so that it just seems, it's interesting.
Yeah.
How many BPs are cloud hosted? Or like on the same thing? Like
everybody running AWS.
Yeah.
I don't think many people run on cloud hosting. It's unless you consider like dedicated server rentals to be quote unquote cloud hosting, because it's an unambiguous term. History is a hard one to tackle. And just before I forget this, one of the hard parts about having BPs do the APIs is running an API is kind of a different skill set than running a block producer. A block producer is relatively easy to operate, and like once you have the knowledge, like it should just run, and there's very little deviation in the amount of like load it takes. Whereas on APIs, like if there's a wax card pack sale or whatever, there's huge spikes in API traffic that need to be you need to be ready to handle. On the block producer side, that's less of a concern. On the API side, it's quite the heavy concern. But I think this goes to one of the other proposals in the API Plus paper is to build a decentralized model to incentivize API hosting. It would be like, I think the graph does this in some ways, where like you get paid to host this data. Like there is an incentivization model to create API operators. And I think it's the 5th proposal in API Plus is to basically form a group to really dive deep into that and figure out if we can align the incentives somehow to get people to run APIs. And based on their performance and based on kind of their reputation, that they get rewarded for that. And it is enough to make sure that like there's this self-sustaining back and forth that is now detached from the block producers. And you can just have like, we would have block producers, and then we'd have this other system of quote unquote API operators. Like if that's possible, then we could we wouldn't have the differing of technical abilities. Like block producers wouldn't need to be API operators, and API operators wouldn't need to be block producers. But that would be an alternative to the centralized model.
Is a block producer a better block producer, like they boots on the ground technicians, if they also have a depth of experience in running API nodes? Does that help them become a better BP, or are they just entirely separated, where it's actually better to separate that knowledge base?
It's a really good question. I think the overlap is probably good. It's either that or they really need some tight coordination. Because I know, like on EOS, for example, we are a block producer, but we are not producing blocks. Like when we route transactions from our APIs to our block production nodes, but we never produce blocks. So we don't, like, that chain is not, we're not fully responsible for accepting and then minting transactions, I guess. So when we get transactions and then they kind of go off into the ether, we have to ask the block producers. It's like, okay, we accepted it and we relayed it into the network. What happened on your side? And if we were also a block producer, we'd arguably be able to kind of trace that a little bit better. But at that point, like I kind of mentioned earlier, you kind of need both of those skill sets. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, I see the benefit in both, but good communication could potentially also overcome that hurdle, which actually in the past 24 hours we've seen with the block producers. Like I'm in a WeChat channel with a number of block producers, and that channel's just been lighting up because I think it was yesterday during the fireside, there was some sort of account spamming the network that was causing, I think, like 2 or 3 block producers to just have empty blocks for some reason. It wasn't that their node wasn't running, it's just that something weird was going on in the peer-to-peer network, and the routing was not like giving them transactions to put inside of blocks. So I don't know if them being an API operator would have resolved that issue, but there is communication that's going on. And like, I think that's been resolved now. I have like 43 messages in WeChat that I haven't caught up on yet.
I have a question that might spill us further over into the weeds on a lot of this BP stuff, but well, somebody asked about cloud and hosting. So then the other question is, how many BPs are running bare metal infrastructure? And then my further in the weeds question on that is, early on at the beginning, at the genesis of the network, there was an idea that there would be like a good geographical distribution of BPs around the world, for the sake of decentralization and resiliency of the network, and even speed to some extent. Whatever happened to that idea, and do you think that idea is still important, of geographical distribution? Yeah, so bare metal then.
In today's world, with everything that's going on, probably geographic distribution would be good. I think we do have a pretty good geographical distribution of where they are. There's an effort to make sure that not all of the BPs who don't own their hardware, they make sure that they're not all in the same data center. Like, we don't want like the AWS outages that you see hit the news and all these websites go down. If that were to happen in a data center where BPs were hosting servers, we don't want to lose like 4 BPs all at once. So BPs do very like thoughtfully, there's probably a better word for that, but they consider where they're putting their operations. I mean, if you go one level higher than that, the way we do it is in year 1 of EOS, when we actually were a top 21 BP, pretty much all of our rewards went into actually buying our own sort of like hardware, and we leased a data center to install all of that hardware. So I think we spent like 120 grand or something, and just really loaded up the rack so we could do history and block production and a whole bunch of like advanced stuff. And that was what our Pomelo grant in season 1 was about, was like, we're expanding. We have our first data center in Michigan. The next one, which is running, is in Vancouver. So now we have 2 geographically distinct locations, thousands of miles away from each other. And that, you know, provides anti-fragility or resiliency or something that prevents failure. I guess.
What else you guys want to tackle?
One thing I was thinking about earlier, which kind of plays off what you guys were just talking about, is we've got 2 remaining payouts for chief delegate budgets, and I'm curious to know what people are doing with the remainder of their funds. We have like, what was that?
You want to throw a pizza party?
No. I've been thinking about what I wanted to do.
Right?
What?
We only have 1 payout remaining?
Should be on March 8th and April 8th. And then the election is the day after the last distribution. But my thought, like, as I was listening to updates, I was thinking about this. Like, John's off working on Fractally. I'm finishing up my thing, and I already took payment for that. Like, a number of us are now in positions where I don't know that we had clear paths forward for what the remainder was. And like, personally, I've been thinking a lot about Pomelo, and like, I'm putting money in to have these videos edited, and like, I'm open to other ideas, but like, what are people's plans at this point with the remainder if it's not going to whatever we originally ran on? That's kind of the question I'm thinking about. And we don't have to jump into it today. I don't want to like put anybody on the spot, but it could be a good topic for today or a future meeting in the next couple of weeks. Pomelo season 2 is coming up in like 3 or 4 weeks. Any reactions, or should we shelve that for a little bit?
I think for mine, I'm going to direct any extra funds I have to the DAO, the no vote by or my vote EOS DAO, because it'll have a DAO structure and then some function in the use of funds. So I think that's probably what I'll do with most of mine.
Cool. Curious to know more about what it would use funds for. I get the DAO.
Yeah, operations time.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a lot
Time.
of effort to keep. I think so. Yeah. Like, well, my
Yeah.
initial thought with funds was going to be like an hourly wage to pay myself to do things, essentially. But now that I work for Helios, it doesn't really make sense. So I think if we put it there, then those who spend the time coordinating and ideally presenting the data that's presentable from the VPs because one of the questions is, do you have bare metal? What does it look like? Sharing costs, I think, to help democratize or at least make it easier for people to learn about that. So that's effort and time, hosting services. So
Yeah, I have a question for Aaron, actually,
Mhm.
so that I don't forget. So right now, what are some of the most important things that the network needs so that we can build a more efficient, I would say, dApps, or I would say DAOs? What are some of these things that?
If we want broader experimentation, like if we want more people experimenting how to build apps in DAOs, it's really SDKs, which is what's coming out in the Wallet Plus paper. There are very few teams that are capable of really building great user experiences right now. And we need to open that up and make it easier. And then once it is easier, we need to just document the hell out of it and educate people on how to use it. Other ecosystems do this pretty well. And right now, to build any sort of good application in this space, you've got to put in the time and become an expert. There are arguably no beginner developers in this space. Like it's just, you can't do anything until you're no longer a beginner. So in my opinion, it is the SDKs and the core technologies that developers need to build these applications.
You're a very rare engineer character who's actually doing the communication work. I feel like there's that tendency among engineers to just retreat into the code and be like, I'll just, it's like kind of an artist mode too. Like, I'm just going to like work on my sculpture and then people will see it and they'll understand. But in blockchain, that is problematic just because these are communities, not like audiences. And so, so I fear when teams that are needed like retreat like into far off places and stop or like diminish communications. I know communication does have a negative impact on output, but output isn't like the only, like it's not like at the apex of all, consideration.
I think
So
DPoS in general kind of forced that out of both me and Scott being the partner I founded Greymass with, because we were both like, we had to be out there to be elected. We had to interact with the community to maintain our status and our funding. So it really forced us not to retreat, despite how much we wanted to retreat. And that's, in my ideal world, where block producers are these crazy value creators or something else in a DPoS-like system where you have to be out there presenting your ideas, even if it's not block producers, is where I was going with that. Is it forces you to not stay in your cave and build that thing, because to like receive your funding, you need to continually be out there and doing it. And then like interacting with like Steam It Inc. Like they had this massive pre-mine and they didn't need anything. They would just like retreat into their hole and do things. And then they'd emerge from their hole with their sculpture, as you said, and the community would look at it and be like, what the hell is that? And it's like they didn't have that feedback cycle because of that retreating that happened. And so for all the ugly things about DPoS, like that might be one of the good ones, is that you have people that are forced to come out and continually communicate, because otherwise, like, you can't just go back to your cave and keep working. Like, you won't be a block producer anymore or a value creator anymore.
Something that has been coming up in my mind a lot lately too is just the whole agile versus waterfall development methodology, which seems so relevant, especially in a community of, comprised of a large number of coders. And the idea that you could just hide away and then come out with some big, it's all there kind of like reveal without having that back and forth that agile kind of indicates might be a lot smarter, where you're like, how about this? Is this good? What about this? Like getting that back and forth with your client or with your community or whatnot. And it's surprising to see.
Me being a video game nerd, Blizzard and Overwatch, one of their huge games right now, they started with Titan, and they went into this hole in this Project Titan, which was what they had. They developed just completely in this bubble, did not work out, project failure. Funny enough, I was actually interviewing to be on the Titan team back in, I don't even remember what year it was, but I got a call as I was getting on the plane to leave California after my interview, which lasted like 2 days. And as I get this call on the plane, they're like, sorry, we can't hire you. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And then the plane took off and I got home. And then the news broke that the project was canceled. And I was like, oh, well, that's a little bit different. But there's this, the reason I'm going down this rabbit hole is there's this video that goes through the history of this project, the failure that they went through, and then the rebirth into something that was successful, being Overwatch. And if you just listen to these developer stories, there's probably like a 5 or 10 minute portion of this video where if you listen to what they're saying and apply it to EOS and EOS.io, like the through line is incredibly similar. And like we have this opportunity and we could arguably learn from the failures that they had on how we could recover. But it really touches on everything we've been talking about for the last like 10 or 15 minutes. When I mentioned it in EOS Gov, it was really just a quick note or whatever, but like that thought has really stuck with me. I've mentioned it to a few people. I'm mentioning it to you guys now. I should really just like share the YouTube clip like at that second and then be like, listen to this and think EOS, because
do share it. We'll include it in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Isn't that where the phrase "you're only as good as your last game" came from?
Yep. And if you've heard that being piped around, that's true. And I guess that is a great way to kind of segue back to what we were talking about, because if you do have the tendencies to go off into your bubble and then come back out with something that you're like, oh, like I did this thing over these past years and here it is. This is this great thing that I didn't consult anybody on. Like, if that fails, that's going to be your reputation. You are only as good as that last project you just did, because there was no communication before or after that. So EOS is kind of in that state, and arguably Dan is kind of in that state where he is only as good as his last game at this point, which at this point is a failure. I mean, we're working on recovering that. Like the failure was probably, I don't know, November with all that drama, December. And we're trending upwards again, but that it's really something to be aware of. Is that if you are going to retreat, like your perception from people is going to be that you really are only as good as your last project. And until you go out and then come back with something new, like that's going to be the reputation that sticks with you. So I'll definitely share that video. Maybe I'll just post it in chat with a small message or something and expand upon that. Because like it's been weeks now since I've been like drawing this analogy, and
I think are we done yet, or
You wish we were done. We have to go another 5 hours to break the record, don't we? Or another yeah, we're still scheduled for at least 4.5 more hours, I think, to make it as far as we did last night.
If you based it per participant of the call, we still win, don't we?
Oh, right. The number of hours, like relative. Maybe. Yeah. Find us a folk tale.
Yeah, so I mean, I have one thing as eating on EO's chief delegates, our thought process. I mean, so where do we go from here in terms of Eden as it stands, and in terms of trying to bring some value to the EOS community? I mean, what is the thought process now?
I think ultimately we're still waiting on if Fractally is going to be the replacement for this, or if we are going to say, no, we're going to continue improving the Eden process. Like it's, there's too much.
Doing?
I'm painting. I think it's hilarious that you just asked, are we done yet? And then you asked this question.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Are we done yet? Because there's this elephant right here. Hold on a second.
Do we got to deal with this elephant?
The ENF is
here. We go. Hour 3.
Looking for us to do something, right? They want us to run Eden and to make it a success so that we can be able to help EOS, right? So
does that mean taking the treasury?
No. I'm just,
who's suggesting that we take the treasury? That's not
trust us.
No one's suggesting that we're taking the treasury.
Are you
so
sure?
What we are doing is we just want to eject Fractally so that we have options to have a team that we can hire. So we can eject them and hire them. But now the chief delegates will be the ones who are in control now.
That term
keep in mind, whenever you
really
eject,
fucking with my head. I don't get the eject term. That means to like take something
right
out
now they're
of.
in control. They're in control.
Yeah, take Fractally out of Eden.
You eject with your
Fractally's
parachute.
not
That's
in
all the
Eden.
funds.
Fractally is in Eden. They have the active permissions of the contract.
The active permission.
I see what you're saying. Eject the. Okay.
Yeah.
So Aaron,
remove permissions.
Metaphorically, we have the top level as the BPs, and then we have the Fractally team as the active permission, and then there's us with this board permission, and we would eject Fractally out of there and bump ourselves up.
For this owner active key thing, if I have an account and I have the owner key, and I give my brother the active key, I am implying that my brother can do whatever he wants with the account. So if the BPs are okay with the Fractally team owning the active key and the Fractally team chooses to give us the active permission, doesn't that imply that the BPs are okay with it too?
It's really murky when it comes to legalities, but technically if you had the owner key and you were just letting somebody else use it with the active key, it's still your account. You are the one that is in ultimate control. I think to kind of like reel this back a little bit, if this is a serious direction, then we need a serious plan that outlines like how Eden moves forward. And I'm not volunteering for that. Like, Randall, you're pushing for it. We have to figure out who's running elections, what system changes are going to happen, what the money would be used for, like what. There's a lot of things that would go into pushing Eden into a new direction.
Are we willing to do that? That's the question. Are we willing to do that? Is it worth it?
Do we have time to do that? Is it another one to tack onto that?
Oh, I think we owe it to the next chief delegates anyway. Otherwise, we're just giving them a turn and say, oh, you do it.
Well,
you figure it out because we couldn't.
You guys have all been like just crapping on the process we have now, but let's say we did nothing. What will happen on the 9th is a new election of people running will come up, and those people will get funded, and those people will use those funds for good things like we have. That's not going to change on April 9th. It sucks that we're not getting upgrades, but if the Eden election on April 9th just runs as is, we're going to get new people that are getting funded with new ideas, and they're going to do things with that money. They're not going to dump it all into one experiment like we're proposing right now. There's going to be dozens of ideas that are funded.
guys, the thing is, if we, the chief delegates, are funding them, we are funding Fractally team, as long as they agree that they are going to work for us, this shouldn't be a problem. So
It shouldn't be.
yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. All right.
As long as
We
they
have
agree
to
to work
ask,
for
though.
us, what does that mean?
As in, if Fractally team wants to stay on and run elections for us and run the smart contract for us, and we are going to pay them, right?
Yeah.
That's not an issue. We are going to need a team anyway, whether it's going to be the Fractally team or it's going to be the Randall team or the Aaron team. There has to be a team to help build this. Think about it like this. The Chinese are running Eden, right? They are going to use their own code. They're going to have their own team. The Koreans are going to have their own team. So the Fractally team is not the only team that can help you run elections. Right? So we should just write down what we need to change, and we'll go out to the team, talk to them, see what they want us to do, how much they want us to fund them, if they want funding for it, and then we will talk to the network. This is what Eden was supposed to do. The thing is, Dan just changed his mind and he screwed us up, okay? But Eden was supposed to do this.
I don't know. Everyone had a different opinion on what Eden was supposed to do.
It's true.
We're supposed to-
Arguably, everything that you guys want to upgrade to in Fractally has an identity crisis too. There are so many questions left unanswered, including the languages we talked to today. So we are moving through this with an identity crisis that we need to figure out.
You see, the whole thing is this whole system of Fractally is so confusing because the name, first of all, is confusing. You say Fractally, you don't know if you're talking about a team or you're talking about application or you're talking about a fractal. Okay.
You think we would have learned by now after Steemit, EOS.io, Fractal, Fractally, but no.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Right?
The trilogy.
Empire Strikes Back. It's the trilogy, yeah.
But if we are thinking about Eden becoming a fractal, then Eden and the chief delegates have the right to decide what our fractal is going to look like. Nobody can tell us that.
Yeah, but before we consider being a fractal or any other, type of DAO, we still need to figure out what the goal is, and that's completely independent of the platform that we host the DAO.
So who's going to decide that? Who's going to decide that?
Well, it's meant to be us, isn't it?
Let's do it.
It's so early on to be deciding that with theoretical
what do you
software
mean?
that doesn't exist. Like, you guys act like we could adopt.
Well, no,
Fractally
I said before we consider the method of however we host the the DAO, we need to figure out what we are. We can do that independently of any software. It's a matter of just absolutely deciding what the goal of our DAO is, or what do you want to call it? It's technically not a DAO, a smart organization.
John, you have wasted our time. Okay, we were a month ago. We could have sat down here and talked about who we are, write our bylaws. You told us to wait for a white paper, and now you are telling us that we have to do that now.
Well, we've always needed to do that. I said that from the very couple meetings. Like, hey, what the hell is Fractally? I mean, what the hell is Eden? Are we some glorified way of just handing out money to the community? In which case, it's probably easier to just do Pomelo and call it a day. Or are we trying to do some governance? Are we trying to get BP power? Like, what the hell is the point? And we never figured that out till even today.
Okay.
I think we should
job is
split
to
our
spend
attention
funds.
between funding Fractally, the birth of Fractally, and supporting EOS. Those are our
Yes.
two main
Yes.
clear
Support EOS.
mandates that we kind of have. One is because I think we have a responsibility to see this experiment evolve, or maybe three. Maybe there's three reasons to exist. One is I think Eden as it is may have value just as it is in its current iteration, even if not for EOS in the long run, just as a smart contract platform that could be deployed wherever, however, by whoever, for like the simple task of using the system to elect people that can delegate resource, apportion resources. So maybe it's maintaining the existing infrastructure, supporting Fractally, and finding a way to continue building on EOS.
I'd rather see another election, and if all people do is donate those funds to Pomelo, like that's better than Eden not
better.
existing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aaron. We can actually just let this thing keep going, but at least we shouldn't let this thing die after we spend 100,000 EOS.
No, experiments succeed and fail, but the information that we gathered is still worth it alone, I reckon, for what Dan's based Fractally on. So
no, but think about it.
Not a failure, even if it did die.
The Chinese are running their Eden election. They are working on it. The Koreans did theirs. So this is something that people like. It's not like people don't like it. It's a matter of us putting effort into it to make it a little bit better and just leave it.
Well, hopefully the Chinese have made some bylaws to go on day one.
Yeah.
They made bylaws?
No, but I don't know, but they're in the process of forming.
I'm going to get my hands on it and see what they came up with.
How many are there?
How many what?
Like members or people that are interested in the Chinese Eden?
I think it's 60. They have 60 or so.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of people. What's left of the Chinese Eden EOS community?
Yeah, well, I wonder what the differences is, or if you could still call it Eden 6 months. It's almost taken that time.
Well, it's not easy. And also they're finding developers. So we may end up needing the Chinese developers to and we could perhaps lean on them to develop to maintain the code base as well. Because they're already, I think, planning on doing that. But yeah. All right. Well, we've got a precious few meetings and precious little time left until our tenure is over, and it seems like folks want to do something dramatic on the way out the door. We should probably come up with a plan that weaves all this stuff together.
Well, I like Aaron's kind of very conservative. Let's just put a list of things that can be improved. Let's just start there, and then I think we all need to kind of think about this whole eject thing a little bit more.
Yeah, but the one thing we have to understand is that we have someone who is actually part of who's wearing another hat for the advisory board for the ENF, right? We have that, and we have someone who also have a little bit of insights in that they can try to get things organized for us in terms of if you want to talk to the ENF or the network to see what is going on, what their thought process is. So basically, and also we have John who can reach out to the Fractally team, right? So basically we have I would say everyone on this meeting technically. So if this is a good idea, we will know. If it's a bad idea, we will know. So I think that we should just do the best to save the system the way it is, and we can even have Fractally as well. Because why can't we have both of them, right? But to kill the baby and not give the baby a chance to grow is not a good thing, in my opinion.
We can let
Plus, I feel like it's going to be a couple of years or a little bit until there's a working Fractally system.
Yes.
So we don't want to kill something too early.
Yeah, we need it.
Can't
to
be
function.
optimistic. We need to be realistic on timelines. This stuff takes time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how long did Eden take for the first MVP? It was 7-8 months or something. No, maybe not that long. I don't know. It was over half a year, but
yeah, it was about 6 months, I think.
There's definitely going to be at least one more election. I would bet on at least 2 or 3 based on if we can get the time frame reduced. This is going to keep going for a little bit.
Yeah.
unless we just pull the plug on it, which I don't
No.
support.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Let the
Right.
experiment keep running, keep learning from it, use the funding that comes from it to improve EOS, just like we all have been.
Because we have all the ingredients in the community to make an excellent stew for EOS, for fractal governance, for Eden if it wants its own life. It's just a matter of getting everyone to contribute and be on the same page about it.
All righty, guys. All right, have a great day.
Awesome.
Have a good night, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Yeah.